I would absolutely die. If this were to change the world and get rid of and pornography and all of the 8 arms of this octopus that has to be destroyed.
That's Jim Caviezel, Oscar-nominated actor, the man who played Jesus Christ on screen. And he is not talking about a movie.
I asked him about that one particular part where everybody's talking, and they all cried out Epstein Island. And I went, oh, okay. Now I understand what we're up against.
He understood what they were up against. The question now is, do we?
There were allegations of a toxic work environment at our show, and then there was an investigation. I learned that things happened here that never should have happened.
She learned. She apologized. She promised a new chapter. And then she vanished. Not from the spotlight, from the country. But here's what nobody is connecting right now. Ellen DeGeneres didn't just leave Hollywood. She moved herself 5,400 miles away from the jurisdiction of United States federal authorities 3 months before the largest release of Epstein documents in history. Jim Caviezel had been warning about this network for years. The DOJ files are now open. And the woman whose name kept surfacing is sitting in the English countryside. So the question isn't just what she knew. The question is, can anyone get to her? Nobody believed him. Then the files dropped. Let's start where this story actually begins. Not with Ellen, not with Epstein, but with a man who risked everything to say out loud what the entire entertainment industry refused to whisper. Jim Caviezel is not a conspiracy blogger. He is not a fringe internet personality with a microphone in his basement. He is one of the most respected dramatic actors of his generation, a man personally selected by Mel Gibson to portray Jesus Christ in The Passion of the Christ, one of the highest grossing independent films ever produced. At the peak of his career, Caviezel had every reason to stay quiet, to protect his brand, to collect his checks, and keep his head down like everyone else in that industry does. He didn't.
It was one of the hardest things I've ever done. But I had a lot of experience from The Passion of the Christ. And we were humiliated. We were taken through the ringer in the media. This was before Trump came out and said it was, the lying media, the fake news. And they were fake news back when we were doing that. But we had to fight for everything we had.
That clip is from Caviezel discussing Sound of Freedom, a film based on the true story of Tim Ballard, a former federal agent who left his government career to rescue trapped children from networks operating across Latin America. Caviezel didn't just play a role in that film. He went to Colombia during production. He witnessed conditions firsthand. He saw what was happening. And when he came back and tried to tell people, the industry came for him. Studios issued quiet warnings. Projects quietly dried up. Distribution was blocked at every turn. The message delivered to Hollywood insiders was unmistakable. Stay away from this film. Stay away from this man. And do not under any circumstances help this story reach the public. Think about what that means for a second. A film about rescuing children was essentially blacklisted by one of the most powerful entertainment ecosystems on Earth, not because it was poorly made, not because it lacked an audience, because somebody, or a collection of somebodies, did not want that story told. And Caviezel, rather than accept the professional destruction quietly, started naming the machine itself. He described Hollywood not as a collection of flawed individuals, but as a system and interconnected structure designed to protect its most powerful members at any cost. He called it an octopus.
I would absolutely die. If this were to change the world and get rid of and pornography and all of the 8 arms of this octopus that has to be destroyed, the only way you can destroy...
Cut off one arm of the octopus, he said, and the body survives. You remove one producer, one host, one executive, and the system regenerates. The other arms keep moving. The machine keeps running. And the machine was built, he argued, not to entertain us, but to protect itself. Now, for years, he was dismissed, ridiculed. The entertainment press treated him like a man who had lost the plot. The word conspiracy theorist was deployed, as it always is, as a social silencer, a way to end conversations before they start. And it worked for a while. Then the DOJ dropped the Epstein files.
Suggested to me that this is probably why this world cabal is involved in all of this stuff. And it has a lot to do with the blood of our children. The public is now awakening to the but eventually leads you to other places like Epstein.
The files revealed a sprawling network, names, connections, a culture of silence so deep and so deliberate, it could only have been maintained through coordination. And the names Caviezel had been referencing for years, they started appearing in documents, not as footnotes, as threads in a much larger web. One of those names was Ellen DeGeneres. The camera loved her. The staff feared her. Before we get to the Epstein connection and the England escape, You need to understand who Ellen DeGeneres actually was not the character she performed for 30 minutes on daytime television, but the person who existed the moment those cameras went dark. For nearly 2 decades, Ellen DeGeneres built one of the most successful personal brands in the history of American entertainment. Be kind. That was her motto, plastered on merchandise, repeated at the end of every episode, said with such consistency and such apparent sincerity that millions of people genuinely believed it. She gave away cars. She made veterans cry. She danced. She hugged. She was, by every measure of public presentation, America's friend.
The truth is, I am that person that you see on TV. I am also a lot of other things. Sometimes I get sad, I get mad, I get anxious, I get frustrated, I get impatient, and I am working.
She said that in September 2020. By then, 36 former employees had already come forward. 3 of her top executive producers had been quietly pushed out, and the picture that emerged from those testimonies was not of a woman who sometimes gets frustrated. It was of a workplace built entirely around one person's comfort and control, a place where fear, not kindness, was the dominant operating emotion. An audience member named Dana Mateo flew from Chicago to Los Angeles specifically to be part of the show. She'd saved up. She'd planned it. She was selected for a segment, and what she described when she got there sounds nothing like what anyone watching at home ever saw. Producers gathered guests before filming and delivered instructions. She was not allowed to be funnier than Ellen. She was not allowed to be smarter than Ellen. She could only speak if Ellen directed a question to her. They made the guests scream and jump around backstage as a test of their energy, a process Dana described as humiliating. Then she got soaked during the water segment, drenched, and was told to go backstage and wait in soaking wet clothes for the duration of the entire show. Nobody brought towels. Nobody brought dry clothes. Nobody came to check on them. They sat there, wet and cold, because once you'd served your purpose in Ellen's world, you simply ceased to matter. These weren't isolated incidents. Formal complaints were filed. Warner Media launched a full internal investigation. Executive producers Kevin Lehman and Ed Glavin were fired. Ed Glavin faced allegations of inappropriate touching. Jonathan Norman, a third producer, was accused of attempted inappropriate behavior with corroboration from multiple other employees. All 3 denied the allegations. All 3 are gone.
Liar, hypocrite. That's my reaction. She's known about this for 17 years. She's created this culture. I was there from day one. We were all petrified of her. She was not nice.
A comedian who knew her writers personally described what happened behind the scenes.
My buddy Greg, who was one of her writers, was like, she's a piece of shit. And he was like, she's a monster.
And this is where the story shifts from a toxic workplace narrative into something darker. Because as investigators and online communities started pulling at that thread, the pattern they uncovered wasn't just about bad management. It was about a collection of unexplained events, mysterious deaths, and suspicious timing that surrounded Ellen DeGeneres like a shadow. Every name, every death, every silenced dot. Let's talk about the curse. Not a supernatural one, not a Hollywood superstition, a pattern, a documented, time-stamped, undeniable pattern of people who were close to Ellen DeGeneres who were no longer here. And we're going to go through every single one because individually, each one can be explained away. Together, they demand attention. We start in the early 1990s with a woman named Kat Perkoff. Before Ellen was famous, before the talk show, before the brand, before any of it, she was in a relationship with Kat. Kat died in a car accident, but not a typical one. Her Mercedes-Benz 450 SL crashed sideways into a large tree, and the vehicle literally split down the middle. Kat's sister later made a claim that haunted true crime communities for years. She said the car appeared to have been tampered with, that the frame looked pre-cut, designed to fail at high speed. There were no skid marks at the scene. None. In a situation where a driver loses control, you typically see skid marks. Their absence raised a question that investigators apparently never adequately answered. The official conclusion? Accident. Case closed. Ellen's response at the time, according to people who knew her, was described by multiple accounts as notably cold. She reportedly drove past the crash site without stopping. That was the first death in Ellen's orbit. It would not be the last. Fast forward to 1997. Ellen is now famous. She begins a very public relationship with Anne Heche, a critically acclaimed actress who had just appeared alongside Al Pacino in Donnie Brasco and was dating Steve Martin at the time. Anne didn't just quietly date Ellen. She walked red carpets with her. She spoke openly about their relationship at a time when doing so in Hollywood was genuinely career-threatening. Anne risked everything.
And you are our best dressed couple this year. No, thank you. Yes, we're very grateful for that award.
For a while, it seemed like the risk was worth it. Then the industry pressure reportedly began. Studios allegedly began threatening to pull projects. Ellen, according to multiple insider accounts, made a choice: career over the relationship. Anne was left. What followed was one of the most publicly devastating mental health collapses in entertainment history. Anne was found in Fresno, California, more than 200 miles from Los Angeles in minimal clothing, knocking on a stranger's door, telling them she was looking for a spaceship to take her to heaven. She was hospitalized, diagnosed with a breakdown, but she survived. She rebuilt. She got married. She had a son. She kept working. For 22 years, Anne Heche kept going. Then came August 5th, 2022.
LA City Fire Department, I got to give it to them right off the bat. The men and women from this fire department, some of the most amazing. Vehicle into a structure, then that car catches fire. And when we say into a structure, I mean all the way in, almost coming out the other side.
Anne was driving her blue Mini Cooper through West LA when her car at speed, with no evidence of braking, launched through hedges, through the front wall of a house, and embedded itself almost entirely inside the structure. It took firefighters nearly 45 minutes to cut her out. She was alive when they pulled her from the wreckage. Days later, she was gone. The official cause of death: inhalation and thermal injuries, with a sternum fracture from blunt force. Toxicology found inactive drug metabolites past use, not active impairment at the time of the crash. That's the official story. But the online questions, and we are telling you what people are asking, not asserting these as facts, never fully went away. Why were there conflicting early reports about her condition? Why did some outlets call her stable while others described her as combative and impaired? And the question that gained the most traction: could a modern car's operating system be remotely manipulated? Engineers who have weighed in on this say technically, yes, under specific conditions, it is possible. Is there any evidence it happened here? No, but the question was asked. Anne's final film before the crash was titled The Girl in Room 13, a movie about human Some online communities speculated that the film's subject matter made her a target. We want to be absolutely clear. That claim has been thoroughly debunked by fact-checkers. There is zero verified evidence connecting her death to that film. But the timing, the subject matter, the pattern people noticed. And what was Ellen's public response to the death of the woman she once called the love of her life?
Have you spoken to Anne Heche at all since her accident?
That's it. That was the response. A brief, flat denial of contact. No extended tribute. No visible grief. No acknowledgement of what Anne had risked for her, what Anne had meant to her. The woman who built an empire on Be Kind had nothing more to offer than two words. For a woman who built a multi-million-dollar brand on kindness, that silence was louder than any tribute could ever have been. Then came Leslie Jordan, October 24th, 2022, just months after Anne Heche. Leslie was a close friend of Ellen's, a frequent guest and eventual co-host on her show, The Tiny, Charismatic Southern Gentleman Who Made Every Room Brighter. His car crashed into a building in Hollywood. Authorities suspected a medical emergency. He was 67. There is no evidence of foul play. None. But the proximity, the timing, another person from Ellen's inner circle, another sudden death people noticed. Ellen posted warmly. She called him a light. She sent love to his family. Her response to Leslie's death was appropriate, genuine, and public, which raised another question. Why that warmth for Leslie and near total silence for Anne? And then Twitch. Steven Twitch Boss was the DJ and co-host of The Ellen Show from 2014 until the program ended in 2022. He wasn't a background employee. He was the face of joy on that set, the dancer, the light, the man audiences genuinely loved. On December 13th, 2022, just 2 months after Leslie Jordan Twitch passed away suddenly, a medical emergency at an LA hotel. He was 40 years old. The full details were never released. Medical emergency is an extraordinarily broad term, and that vagueness created space for speculation. Ellen posted a tribute. She called him pure love and light. But online, as people began connecting these deaths, a specific word started appearing. Curse. Now look, Hollywood curses are not new. The 27 Club, the Poltergeist curse, the Superman curse. Every major entertainment institution eventually acquires one. And curses, by definition, don't require belief to spread. They just require a pattern that enough people notice. And this pattern, Kat Perkoff, Anne Heche, Leslie Jordan, Twitch, that pattern is undeniable, regardless of how you interpret it. But here's what Jim Caviezel's framework adds to all of this. He's not just talking about bad luck. He's talking about a system that protects people. A system where powerful figures remain insulated from accountability, where uncomfortable questions get buried, and where anyone who gets too close or knows too much finds themselves sidelined, one way or another. And now, Caviezel's framework has a fresh set of federal documents to point to. 3 months, $15 million, 5,400 miles in January 2025, the Department of Justice released a significant batch of the Epstein documents. These were not summaries. These were not redacted briefings. These were detailed records of a sprawling network, a web of powerful, influential figures connected to Jeffrey Epstein's criminal operation. Names, connections, communication records, and a culture of collective silence so coordinated, It could only have been deliberately maintained. According to unverified allegations, and we want to be precise, these are allegations, not proven facts. Leaked materials, including emails and voice notes, reportedly placed Ellen DeGeneres in a significant senior capacity within Epstein's network. These are claims. They have not been prosecuted. They have not been confirmed by federal authorities in any public statement, but they exist, and they are being discussed, and they fit a pattern that Caviezel had been describing for years. Now let's look at the timeline, because the timeline is where this story becomes impossible to dismiss. October 2024, 3 months before the largest drop of Epstein documents, Ellen DeGeneres sells her Montecito, California mansion quietly, quickly, at a price that suggested urgency over profit. November-December 2024, Ellen purchases a $15 million estate in the Cotswolds, England. Rural, private, extremely far from Los Angeles federal courthouses. Early 2025, the Epstein files drop. Ellen is no longer in the United States. Now, we are not stating as fact that Ellen left the country because of the Epstein files. What we are stating as fact is that the timeline exists, that the sequence of events, sell mansion, buy English estate, Epstein documents drop, happened in that specific order. And when you layer that timeline onto Caviezel's warnings about a network of powerful people who protect themselves at all costs, the questions people are asking online become very hard to ignore. Why leave the country right before the documents drop? Why sell the mansion so quickly? Why go silent publicly, professionally, and socially all at the same moment? Ellen's talk show had already ended. Her reputation had already been damaged by the toxic workplace allegations. Her friend Twitch was gone. Anne Heche was gone. And now, with federal documents beginning to surface, she relocated to one of the few countries on Earth where American federal authority has significant extradition limitations. And this is the part of the story that the internet has been discussing in very specific terms. Because here's the legal reality. The United States and the United Kingdom do have an extradition treaty. If federal authorities were to formally charge a U.S. citizen currently living in England, the process to bring that person back is complicated. It requires diplomatic coordination. It requires formal legal proceedings on both ends. It takes time. And in the gap between accusation and extradition, an enormous amount of evidence management can happen. An enormous amount. Nobody is saying Ellen has been charged. Nobody is saying she is formally under investigation by name in any publicly confirmed federal proceeding. What people are saying is that the pattern, the timing, the relocation, the silence looks less like a coincidence and more like a calculation.
Wow.
Epstein Island isn't the only island.
That line. Sit with that line for a second. Because Caviezel said it before the files dropped. He said it when most people were still calling him a conspiracy theorist. And now there are federal documents open to the public, and one of the people whose name keeps appearing in online discussions about those documents is living on a $15 million estate in rural England. They talked about Harvey. They won't talk about this. There is one more layer to this story that Caviezel has been pointing to for years, and it becomes most visible right now in the response, or rather the non-response, of the late-night television machine. Jimmy Kimmel covered Harvey Weinstein. Jimmy Fallon addressed R. Kelly. Stephen Colbert, Seth Meyers, every major late-night host took their turn performing moral outrage at industry scandals. It's a comfortable role. It's easy to condemn someone the industry has already decided to sacrifice. It costs nothing. But watch how many of those same hosts have addressed the Epstein documents in the context of their own industry. Watch how many of them have mentioned Ellen DeGeneres' name in connection with those files. Watch how many of them have asked on camera with their multi-million-dollar platforms why a woman who was already a subject of national controversy quietly relocated to England 3 months before those documents dropped. The silence is not accidental. The silence is the octopus. This is Caviezel's argument made visible in real time. The machine doesn't just protect its members through action. It protects them through inaction, through strategic silence, through the deliberate choice of which stories get amplified and which stories get buried. Harvey Weinstein's behavior was known within Hollywood for 30 years before a single major publication printed it. R. Kelly's history was documented by journalists for nearly a decade before the industry was willing to act on it. Diddy's federal investigation, the music industry sat on whispers about that for years. Each time, the industry responds with shock. Each time, the claim is made that nobody knew. Each time, that claim proves false. People knew. They always knew. And in this case, Jim Caviezel knew and said so years before a single federal document became public. That's the part that should be sitting uncomfortably with people right now. Not just what is in the Epstein files, but the fact that a man with direct knowledge of the entertainment industry, a man who witnessed operations firsthand during production in Colombia, came back and told us there was a system, named names, described the octopus, and was destroyed professionally for doing it. And now that man is being proven right, document by document. The question nobody is asking loudly enough. So let's bring this back to the central question, the one that the internet has been circling, and that mainstream media has been conspicuously avoiding. Ellen DeGeneres is now a British resident. She is living on private land in the Cotswolds, one of the most beautiful, remote, and expensive regions of rural England. She is not giving interviews. She is not making public appearances. She has not addressed the Epstein discussions in any public forum. She has simply stopped existing in the public eye, and she has done so from a location that is technically outside the immediate reach of U.S. federal authority. Now, and this is important, an extradition treaty between the U.S. and U.K. does exist. If American authorities were to formally charge her with a specific crime, there is a legal pathway to bring her back, but that pathway is slow. It is political. It involves international legal coordination, hearings on both sides of the Atlantic, diplomatic negotiations, and a timeline measured in months or years rather than days. In the meantime, the question being asked across online communities, from Reddit threads to YouTube comment sections to political commentary channels, is simple. Is anyone actually watching? Are U.S. federal authorities actively monitoring the situation? Has Ellen's name appeared in any formal investigative proceeding? Are British authorities being kept in the loop? The public has no confirmed answers to any of those questions. What the public does have is a timeline, a pattern, a set of open federal documents, and a warning issued years ago by a man who risked his career to issue it that is now proven more accurate than any mainstream media coverage at the time.
The 8 arms of this octopus that has to be destroyed. The only way you can destroy it.
Cutting off one arm isn't enough. That was always his point. You remove one producer, one figure, one name from the headlines, and the machine absorbs it. The other arms keep moving. The system survives. The only way to dismantle it is to pursue all of it simultaneously, without letting geography or celebrity or the passage of time create enough distance for the structure to recover. And right now, one of the arms of that octopus is sitting in England. The former UK Prime Minister's residence is a few hours from the Cotswolds. Buckingham Palace is a 2-hour drive. The British establishment has its own complicated history with powerful figures and accountability. Ellen DeGeneres has not relocated to a neutral country. She has relocated to a country with its own deep establishment culture, one that historically has not been particularly aggressive about holding powerful people accountable for things that happened across an ocean, which means the pressure to keep asking questions cannot come from governments. It cannot come from late-night hosts who have proven they'll stay silent. It cannot come from a media industry that is structurally incentivized to protect its own. The pressure has to come from the public, from people who remember what Jim Caviezel said, from people who watched Sound of Freedom, despite the industry trying to kill it, who listened when he named the octopus, who kept asking questions when mainstream culture told them to stop. He said he knew, and the record now suggests he did. Ellen DeGeneres fled a country 3 months before the biggest drop of Epstein documents in American legal history. She relocated to a $15 million estate in rural England. She went silent. She sold her mansion. She left. Around her orbit, a woman who loved her publicly and was left. A colleague who died on a highway with no skid marks at the scene. A co-host who passed suddenly at 40, a friend who crashed his car into a building months later, and a network of late-night hosts, major studios, and media platforms that have said collectively almost nothing. Jim Caviezel warned us about the octopus. He described the system. He named the silence. He paid for it with his career. And now, document by document, that warning is being validated. The British countryside is beautiful. It is also very far from a federal courthouse. The Epstein files are still being processed. More documents are expected. More names, more connections, more patterns. And the question that every person watching this should be sitting with tonight is not just what Ellen knew, or when she knew it, or what role, if any, she played in any of it. The question is, if the evidence emerges, can anyone get to her? And more importantly, will anyone try? Jim Caviezel risked everything to say the things he said. He told us the machine was real. He told us the octopus had 8 arms. He told us the silence was not accidental. The files are open now. The timeline is public. The address in the Cotswolds is a matter of record. What happens next depends on how many people keep asking the question loudly enough that the machine cannot absorb it. Drop your thoughts in the comments, because right now, the only people talking about this are us.